You can cry on command.
But they are usually very fast, and that is why I decided to create this. Welcome to Free Talk, the show to help you learn English the fun and simple way. Ready?
Hello guys and welcome back to Free Talk podcast. My name is Alan and I am the host of this show where we have but one objective: to take your English to the next level, the fun and simple way. The episode of today is going to be yet another rant. No, Alan, no more rants. We are tired of listening to your complaints. No, I'm just kidding. Today we will talk about something that I am not very happy about, but I don't hate it that much. And that is millennials. Yeah, millennials. I'm sure you know what that is because it's a very common term. People talk about it a lot. And if my statistics are not lying, there is a high probability that you yourself are a millennial. Well, let's start. First, I want to tell you that for the episode of today, I'm going to be using a lot of information taken from a lot of surveys. So you are asking yourself, what is a survey? So the spelling is S-U-R-V-E-Y. Survey. And survey is a study. It's a recollection of information to determine specific results. For example, when, imagine that you are walking on the street and somebody stop you and they ask if it's okay that they ask you a series of questions. So let's suppose that the questions they are asking you are, what kind of juice do you drink? Do you prefer natural or artificial? How often do you drink it, etc.? So these people are asking those questions because they want a result. They want to have statistics about something. Well, on this episode, a lot of the numbers that I will give you are coming from surveys, but I will not mention the sources, the providers of this information, because that is not really relevant to the topic and it's honestly kind of boring. So let's start defining the millennials. Millennials, they are also known as the millennial generation or Generation Y. This group of people are a demographic group. Demographic means that these people together represent a certain part of the population. For example, they are the same ages or same or similar levels of education and all that. That is demographic. So the millennials are a demographic group and they are the next generation after the Generation X. So Generation X was the previous generation and millennials are the next generation. Now, there are no precise dates on when this generation starts and ends. So we don't have, of course, an specific or an exact date, an exact number, but most researchers, the professionals of sociology and all these things that they do some research, they use birth years ranging from the early 1980s to the early 2000s. So that means that millennials are usually or were usually born between this, inside this period, between the 1980s and the early 2000s. Now, maybe the most known or some of the most recognized authors to talk about this term were William Strauss and Neil Howe. And these two guys in 1987 they coined the term. So this is another word we can explain, coined. So I'm sure that you know this word. The word is C-O-I-N, coin, but we usually know it as a noun, as a thing, when we talk about money. So you have these round circles of metal and you have paper bills. For example, if you think about $1, usually you have the bill, the paper, but you can have coins. For example, in America, you have 4 quarters. These are 4 coins, 4 metal round things, and these are money. But when we use it as a verb, when we say that someone coins something, we mean that this person is using for the first time a new word or a new term. For example, in this is the perfect example. We talk about millennials. So millennials was not a word that existed, but these two guys made the research and then they coined the term. They introduced this new word into circulation. Okay? Now, these two guys coined this term and they said that millennials were people who were born around 1982, and these were children that were entering preschool, and the media, television and newspapers and all that, they were starting to identify that these people had a link, a connection to the millennial year 2000. So that is why the term is millennial, because of the new millennial, the year 2000. So if we use that time as a reference, today millennials should be aged, they should be something between 16 years and 34 years. That will be the average age of millennials. Now, that is only the definition of a millennial in terms of their age. But this classification is made because different generations they have in common a number of different attributes or characteristics or traits. T-R-A-I-T, trait. That means some feature, some attribute that is common among a group. Those are traits. So some of these traits that we can talk about are, for example, the identity. A study from last year shows that millennials, or members of this generation Y, are less likely to strongly identify with the generational term. So they are, because of these researchers say they are millennials, but they don't feel like I don't know, they don't identify with this. It's not something that they embrace. It's not something that they like to say like, oh yes, we are millennials. And that is something different from previous generations. People from the generation X and the generation that came before, the baby boomers, were more, they had a tendency to identify themselves with this name for their generation. And millennials, they most frequently choose to define themselves with more negative terms. So they say that they are a generation of people who is self-absorbed. Self-absorbed. That means that they are absorbed in themselves, like me, 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 me. And also they use words like wasteful, wasteful, wasteful. That means people who waste a lot, people who are not savers, they waste things. And they also identify themselves with the characteristic of being greedy. That's Greedy, greedy. And that means that like they want more, specifically, or more often money. Like if you are greedy, you say I want more, and usually money. Now, these are the traits, the characteristics that are most often associated with millennials. There are other researchers and other professionals that they say that this generation is maybe more like civic minded. That means that these people have a strong sense of community, both local and global. So this is like a discrepancy. It's a difference because some people think that the millennial is self-absorbed. It's individualistic, but some others think that the millennials are more like with this need to be a part of a group. And what I found to be interesting when I was doing this research is that another researcher said that these members of this generation, she decided to call this generation the generation me. And I think that makes a lot of sense. For me, millennials are more absorbed in themselves. Think about selfies, for example. By the way, I hate selfies. But this is something that was not very common in the past, and maybe it's because of the technology, and it's easier now to take a picture of yourself, but now you cannot open your Facebook or Instagram or Twitter without seeing a selfie. It's a very common thing. People like to show the world themselves, and I think that's something that it's you can see it anywhere, and this is something that this researcher specifically says that millennials have a strong sense of entitlement, like me, and narcissism. Like I'm beautiful. People need to see how beautiful I am. So I think that's, in my opinion, that's something that I agree with because it's very common to see it. Now, another couple of things that really, to me, that resonated with me is that there are changes between generations. Like when we compare the past generations to this new generation, in terms of interests or the importance that people give to things, we can really see a difference. For example, in some studies, they were talking about wealth. Wealth, that is WEALTH, wealth. And wealth is, it's a synonym of richness. It has to do with having money and having possessions and having houses and all of that. And the number of people that consider wealth to be a very important attribute to their lives went from, for example, 45%, the baby boomers, that's 2 generations behind, they said, okay, 45% of these people said wealth is important. But 75% of millennials think it's important. So that is, it's a great increase in the number that these current people, these young people of today, have a very strong interest in wealth. And also another things change. For example, the percentage of people who said that it was important to be involved in political affairs went down from 50% on baby boomers to 39% on the past generation to 35% for millennials. So we are like more, I don't know if it's maybe too much to say, obsessed with material things and money, and we are less interested in other things that maybe are important as well. And another thing that I think also is perhaps a very determining thing of this generation is about work. So I read that some employers are concerned, they are preoccupied, they are worried that millennials have too great expectations from the workplace. So they want more than what they have. Like, and I think that's common if you think about it maybe yourself. We when we finish college and we go out into the real world and we start looking for jobs, we think that what is in the market, it's not enough, that we deserve more and we need more money, better salaries, and more innovative work and more versatility and flexibility in the workplace. And we find, or we try to find this work-life balance. And I think that's something that really maybe is the biggest difference between this generation and previous. Just think about maybe your parents, maybe your father or your mother. In the past, people usually got a job young and they stay in the same job for years and years, for decades, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and then they retire. And we, this generation, we cannot stand that idea. That's like crazy. How am I going to work in the same place, doing the same job for 4 years? So we have like this thirst, this hunger for change, and we go from job to job and we try to escalate positions, and we want to do more innovative things that are new. And finally, maybe the most distinctive aspect of our generation, and I am sure that maybe you will agree with me on this one, is technology. One study showed that 97% of some students that were surveyed, they owned a computer. They have a computer at home. 97%. And 94% have a mobile phone, a cell phone. And 56% of these students had an MP3 player. And there are other numbers about the use of instant messaging, like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, and also this tendency to multitask. Like we have to be using our messaging service, but we have to be doing other things, like you are watching a movie or you are listening to some music or to the radio, but at the same time you are sending messages to your friends or I don't know. But we cannot just stand and do one thing at a time. We have to do a lot of things. And that is one of the reasons why millennials are identified as digital natives. That means that technology is a part of our lives. We use it to do everything. When we are doing some school research, when we have to do homeworks, we go to the internet. That is our primary source of information. And it has become so ingrained, so how can I say it? It's so much a part of our life that if for example, if in this moment I were to remove from you all your technological devices, you will feel bad. I mean, physically and mentally, bad because it's an extension of yourself. Actually, this is something that I really, really found to be very interesting. In 2010, there was a research that was published in some magazine that claimed, they said that students who used social media, namely Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, what have you, and then when they decided to quit, when they decided to abandon the social media, they showed the same withdrawal symptoms of a drug addict who quit their stimulant. So just imagine that. It's like the comparison is so crazy that when you use social media and you are a millennial and you use social media and then you decide to quit social media, you experience the same effects as if, for example, you were a cocaine addict and then you didn't do cocaine anymore. That is, in my opinion, crazy. But I don't want to finish this episode without asking you again. My question for you on this episode is: how much of a millennial are you? Do you identify yourself with these characteristics? I personally do, with some of them, like the technological aspect. I think that's very true for me. But the reason why I don't like, this whole thing of calling you millennial or Generation X or baby boomer or whatever, it's because we have this tendency to label everything. We need to put a label on everything. So you have to be something. We need to tell what people are. So we just don't see people. We need to say if they are Americans or Latinos, if they are black or white, gay or heterosexual. We are just people. And I hear so often that people say, well, we do this or that, or we act in this way or that way because we are millennials. It's like a justification. Yes, we are self-absorbed, but we are millennials. It's part of our generation. And that, in my opinion, that shouldn't be the case. Anyways, I find this topic very interesting and I would love to read your opinions about it. Remember that you can leave me your comments here on the iTunes Store review section or on my webpage www.freetalkingles.com/podcast. And now it's time for a quick, oh so quick, word on pronunciation. Okay, now the word on pronunciation of today, I want to talk about mispronunciation. That means a pronunciation it's usually wrong, and that is very common for non-English speakers. So if your native language is not English, and especially if your native language is Spanish, this is very common. And I am talking about the words that in English begin with the consonant S followed by another consonant. For example, think on the word strange. S-T-R-A-N-G-E. Strange. The first two letters are S and T. So the correct sound should be strange. Strange. So it's the letter S, of course. But because this combination is not common in our language, we usually say estrange. Estrange. Because that sounds more natural. We, in Spanish, for example, I'm using Spanish as a reference, we don't have these words that start with st, or sp. So we have this need to say strange. Of course, this little mistake is not very important. If you say strange, listen, it's not very noticeable. Strange, people will, of course, understand what you are talking about. but the idea is to sound as natural as possible. So this is a tiny error that you can pay attention to. And the exercise that I will recommend to you is very easy. So just find a text, a short one, an article, or a chapter, a page of a book, something, and then record yourself reading it on your cell phone, or if you have a voice recorder, use it. I'm sure that you will find some of these words in whatever text you are reading. And after that, listen again to your voice. I know that you are not going to like your voice. Trust me, I hate my voice when it's on recording. But listen to your voice and pay attention to those words that begin with this combination. Very probably, you will realize that you are making this mistake. Because sometimes we say, no, I don't make this mistake. I don't make any mistake. But when you record yourself and you listen back, you find those mistakes. So the correction to this problem is very easy. Because now that you know it, every time you find these words, your brain will tell you, watch out, careful. It's a tricky one. And you will start correcting it automatically. But the first step is listening to yourself making this mistake, and I promise that you will correct it. Okay? So just do it. I mean, trust me on this one. Okay, so we are going to finish this episode of the podcast here. It went a little longer than usual. Again, it's almost 28 minutes. But anyway, I think that the topic was interesting and it was worth the duration. So I will tell. I'm going to make an announcement next Friday. Next Friday, we are going to make a special podcast, but it's just going to be an announcement. I have some news to tell you about the progress of this podcast in the future weeks, a little change we are going to make. So come back here next Friday to listen to that information, and I promise you that what is going to happen in the next weeks, you are going to like it. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast if you are not subscribed yet. Don't forget to visit www.freetalkenglish.com. We have a lot of content. We have videos, articles, this podcast, a free course, a lot of things. So thank you for listening. I will see you on Friday, and keep it simple. See you then.